It's on. Okay, sorry. That was my fault. Okay, so it's live now.
Okay, let me
Sorry
check
about the
the
technical difficulties. That was an ordeal and a half, everybody.
Okay, it's
That
on
was
now.
horrible.
It's on.
It's
Okay.
on? Okay. Thank,
Yeah.
like,
Okay.
the Messiah.
Oh yeah. Thanks,
Okay.
StreamYard, the Messiah.
Oh my god.
Rescue.
This,
Okay.
like, duck hovering over me just like, is, like, my Jesus.
Okay, I'm posting it on my story now, so
Okay.
you guys can take it away with the introductions.
Okay, cool. Do you want to go first, Amani?
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Black Equestrians panel that we have for you today. So we're just going to get started with introduction of everyone, and I'll start. I'm Imani Uzel. I live in Pennsylvania. I'm 19 years old, and I've been riding for 9 years.
Okay. I'll go last since it's on my channel, so everyone else take your turn.
Okay.
Okay.
Michaela. I'm 18. I'm from North Carolina. I've been riding for the past 5 years, I think.
Hi, I'm Nana, also called Nana, anything you want, but I live in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I've been riding for 4 years now, and I'm 17 years old.
Okay. Sorry, I was just adding it to my story. So, for those of the people on my channel that don't know, because it looks very strange for me to be on a Black Equestrians panel when I am like literally a snowflake. My dad's Black, so I'm half Black, and I'm using my channel as a platform mostly for everyone else to speak because I can't speak on what it's like to be an equestrian experiencing racism. So, yeah.
Shelby tagged the wrong Michaela, by the way.
Oh, shoot. Oh my god, I just did the first ones that came up because it listed everyone from the group chat.
Yeah.
Shit. Okay.
Well, she does ride Archie, but like for two different people. I realize that's very confusing, but
Oh yeah, there's too many accounts and I was trying to be fast. Okay. Sorry, 1 second. Just carry on while I change this.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you want to go ahead, Amani?
Sure. So I'll read out the first question. Let me get it. All right. So the first question we have for today's panel is, what is the hardest obstacle you face as a Black equestrian? So would Nana and Michaela like to answer this first one?
sure.
Yes. So I think the hardest thing I personally face as a Black equestrian is people not taking me seriously. So I've been at many barns and honestly, I've only been riding for 4 years, so I've been a bit of a barn hopper. Like, as I started my running career, I think I went through like 4 or 5 different barns, and I feel like that's kind of the norm. Like, the Black experience in the equestrian community is just kind of trying to find a place to fit in, really, because you kind of feel judged. So I felt for a long time in my riding career that people just didn't take me seriously, didn't think I had money, didn't think I could even afford the sport, didn't really want to waste their time on me, while they would give all the other students and everything so much attention. And it's really nice that I found kind of my own zen in the new barn that I'm at. And it's just a huge part of being Black is kind of having to surround yourself with people that support you and that essentially like you, because that's not the case for a lot of equestrians in the sport. But I'm glad I found my barn family. But I guess that I would say that's probably my biggest struggle in this sport.
Okay.
I think personally, coming from a other sports background, my hardest thing with riding is not being able to find someone to look up to that looks like me. I struggle a lot with not feeling like I could progress really far in the sport because there's no one that looks like me. And it's just really hard to figure out what I want to do because I don't have anyone to look up to or anyone who kind of looks like me, which is easier in other sports like basketball, for instance. It's so easy just to find a black basketball player, but finding a black equestrian who's a pro is like really hard. I know one that's from America, so that's definitely the hardest part for me.
That makes
Okay,
sense.
thank you. So now we're going to hop to the next question, and I will talk with Shelby. So this question is, how do we make the horse world more diverse? Would you like to go first, Shelby?
Sure. So my ideas for making it more diverse are largely like normalizing the idea of multiple cultures in the horse world. And the only way we can really start to do that is with organizations taking the initiative to advertise, like in advertisements for clothing, for example, like different ethnicities, different body types, all sorts of different looking people, and then show organizations as well. Because honestly, like, what show program have like any of us open where there's actually like riders of color in it? Like, I can't even think of one. All of the riders they depict in the like most of the local show programs are white. And that, like, people who are closeted racists never having to look at a person of color like helps enhance their racism, because they can keep denying it and then they can't explain why they're upset when they see a rider of color at the show. But if they normalized it for everyone, including young kids who have racist parents who are just constantly seeing like, hey, like, there's people who ride that look different than you and it's okay and they're supposed to be here and we can all be harmonious in a diverse like riding world type thing. But that's like the probably the tip of the iceberg, because the largest attractor for the riding world for most people, I would say, is the price and accessibility. And the closet racism plays into that, because trainers are honestly, they're really discriminatory for multiple reasons. And the racism in the horse world, because of how whitewashed it is, it's enabled. Because since I look white, people are racist in front of me all the time. Like, all the time in the horse world, because they don't know and they expect that it won't get called out. And for most people, they won't say anything when they hear something racist or see something unfair. And then it shows the racist people that it's okay. So I think people need to create opportunities, but also start calling out their friends and their trainers when they're being unfair to others. And yeah. So then,
Okay. So for me, I really think it's largely to do with most of the equestrians that are already out there that have been riding for longer than we have been are not welcoming. So it's largely, I hear there's a lot of the young Black girls, like I was myself, and like we were ourselves, that want to get into sport, but it's like you said, Shelby, you don't see anyone in the Olympics that's Black on the equestrian team. You don't see anyone on catalogs for equestrian wear and tag and all that stuff. You don't see any diversity. It's all strictly skinny, tall, blonde, brunette. It's just not welcoming, and it's hard for young children to be able to feel like they're wanted in a sport that has no one that looks like them. Luckily, I went through it and I dealt with it, but it's really going to get better for more people.
yeah, that makes sense.
To join, because right now it's not welcoming at all.
I would agree. Like, I would agree just from what I've seen people say, and like, yeah.
Oh, you can say.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was worried we were taking too much time.
No.
I think that, sorry, I totally lost my train of thought. Circle back to me. Answer the next question.
This question is, what can we do to amend the fact that riding is an overwhelmingly white sport? I think we mentioned this before in our practice. We don't quite think amend was the right word for it, but I guess what can we do to change the fact that riding is an overwhelmingly white sport? So for this question, would Nana and Shelby like to answer?
Yeah, sure. So personally, I think the most common answer people resort to is to make the sport cheaper. And while I agree this sport can cut down costs in a lot of different avenues, I think it's inherently, I guess, problematic in itself to assume that it's just the costs that's holding everyone back or POCs back from joining the sport. Because as you can see, there's a lot of Black or I guess Black people in general who can afford the sport, but you don't see them doing the sport, and that's just because it doesn't give a welcoming aura to POC equestrians everywhere. If you look on your Instagram feed and you scroll down, how many Black equestrians do you see on your feed? And be honest, you don't see a lot at all. I don't see any, actually. So I see 0 Black equestrians. I don't know about you guys, but when I go on the home page and I click a post and I scroll down, it's only, white equestrians. And I never see myself represented. So if people aren't going to see themselves represented in a community, they're not going to want to join. I show on the California A circuit. And whenever I go to horse shows, I've been to Hits Thermal and all these shows, the Oaks and all that. Whenever I go, I'm the only Black person there, as well as my parents. And whenever we're there, we're always getting stared at. We're always getting kind of like gasped at, like gawked at. And it's not welcoming. And it makes you feel like you're an outcast in this sport. And, you get uncomfortable questions and people have come up to me and like run their fingers through my hair. And so, it just creates a warm aura for any person in the sport. So what we need to do is we need to fix our message. We need, more diversity on these. We need to put pressure on a lot of big businesses as well to feature Black equestrians and get Black equestrian models, because it's not even like there's not a lot of us out there. You just don't see us because there's no representation. So, Shelby, did you want to say anything on it?
Yeah, I would say too that like a lot of white people will brush off the necessity to have like those role models and that representation, because I've heard people like justify it by being like, well, isn't it kind of racist that you need someone that looks like you? And like, I just want to point out for the white people watching this that it's easy for you to say that as someone who has never struggled to have yourself represented in your sport. So I think people need to be more considerate of listening to other people's struggles, as well as more welcoming to beginner riders in general, because beginners can't even post on Instagram without getting shredded a new one. And if you add in racism to all of the judgment we already have in the horse world, it's just horrendously toxic. So we could all do better by listening more to other people's struggles and just being more welcoming to anyone who shows interest in the sport instead of mocking them for not knowing things. And yeah.
Okay, good.
This is a good question.
Should we move to the next one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so next question is some of the grammar is a little messed up, so I'm trying to fix it as we go.
Okay.
I tried my best to retype.
It's okay. So, horse riding sounds expensive. What are initiatives to make the sport accessible to more potentially Black riders who very likely don't have the income to participate? So I think that me and Michaela can answer this. If you'd like, I can go first.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so like Nana was saying before, there's I guess a mentality that people have that Black people cannot afford, nice things or more expensive things, but we can't forget the people that can't actually afford to do the sport that actually want to, and it's unfortunate because it holds them back because the sport is so expensive. So we have to make sure that the people that are less fortunate than some of us are able to have the same opportunities as us to share with horses, because everyone deserves to have a life with something they love. So for me, in Pennsylvania, I live in the suburbs of Philly, and there is a barn called Shimone Equestrian Center, and they have a program dedicated to inner city kids up until they're up until they graduate high school, that allows them to come ride, come help at the barn. A lot of the kids play polo because we do have a polo team. Kids can basically take care of all the horses, ride at leisure. And I was at that barn for a while. I got to be around the people that were in the program. And it's just really nice to see that, these kids that are in the city that are less fortunate have the same opportunity as, rich, wealthy people, because this is a program that's, it's not, what is it? It's what's the word I'm looking for? Nonprofit organization. So everything basically is donated to them, and have obviously a lot of fun doing it. We need more programs like that in the country, because I don't hear about many of them at all. You want to go, Michaela?
Yeah. So I think it's a hard question because, like Nana said, not every Black person doesn't have money. I think we brought up when we were practicing that a lot of Black people, if they are rich, they're new. It's not old money, it's new money. So putting money into things like horses aren't your top priority. Like, it's more in smart investment to go into retail, or not retail, but like get houses or whatever. So I think making things that don't need to be so expensive, like horse clothes, for instance, more accessible than they are is really important. Like things like basketball. I'm gonna bring up basketball. I played it for like 10 years. So, the shoes are like $100, $200, and they'll last you 2 seasons. But nice riding boots are like $1,000, which is insane to expect people to just shell out this money continuously. And it's not like once you buy the horse, oh, that's it. There's just so much money that goes into everything. I think it's just, plus all the racism that's in the sport, it's just not an environment that people just want to be in, I guess. So it is expensive. I think there need to be more programs. There's a couple in North Carolina I know of, but not everyone lives in the city. So I think just having more programs is really the main answer for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, on to the next question. I think this is from a viewer. Do you guys think it's okay for white or privileged equestrians to speak out for people of color? I know some find it offensive or silencing, and I definitely don't want it to be like that on my Insta, but I also feel that it does make a difference if you don't have show. Okay, we're going to stick with the first part. Do you think it's okay for white or privileged equestrians to speak out for people of color? Let's see. So, you, Nana, and I, yes, want to answer this question.
Yeah.
All right, you can go first.
Okay. So I believe that it's very important that we have allies in this movement. I also believe that what we find happening is that a lot of white voices are silencing Black voices unintentionally. So a lot of people are, I guess, seeking more white voices than going to the voice that they should be going to, which is Black people. So what we need to be doing is, yes, amplifying those voices, but we need to also make sure that people are seeing these Black people as well. So, sharing a bunch of Black artists, Black equestrians, hearing what they have to say, because it could be totally different from what you're hearing. And also know, of course, not every Black person's the same. There is tons of different opinions we're going to have on different situations. So that's why it's very important to be listening to all the different equestrian, not even only equestrians, but all the different Black voices that are out there, because each of them have a different say. And it's just important not to, I guess, put down anybody's voice that is from the BIPOC community, because doing so just harms the whole message entirely, and it just kind of disregards Black people as a whole.
Oh no, is it?
This question is like, of course, can you see me or hear me still?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
froze
we can
for a
hear
second.
you. Yeah.
Okay. So my take on this question is that I really do think it's important for privileged and white equestrians to speak out for us, because there aren't many. So when I'm scrolling down my feed or anything and I see that there are allies of us out there, it's really heartwarming to see, because obviously there is a lot of racism in the equestrian world. But I do feel like when it comes to other equestrians having questions about or to people of color in the equestrian world, that they need to go to all types of different Black equestrians to ask these questions, not just, the light-skinned ones that look more closely to your skin tone. Every Black person has different experiences, and definitely different skin tones have different experiences. Like, I know Shelby said earlier before that a lot of people are probably surprised, like, why she's doing a Black panel, and a lot of people probably don't know that she is Black, but you wouldn't be able to tell that. So there's so many different tones of Black, and there's very different experiences that those different skin tones have. So it's important to speak to every skin tone, get all the different experiences, and hear the voices from everyone, because you can't just listen from one and not listen to the other. So yeah, it's very important to have privileged equestrians or white equestrians to speak out, but they also need to reach out to all different types of Black equestrians, not just one type that, fits their stereotype that they like.
Okay.
All right. Shall we go to the next question?
Yes.
Okay. So I think this is a good one. How to deal with white privileged people who get defensive when challenged in the equestrian world. So,
So everyone, just kidding.
So Michaela and Shelby, I don't think you guys have talked together yet. So do you want to?
No. This is Michaela, you can start.
Alright, so I think it really depends on who the person is. If it's one of your friends, I would maybe be more kind. But if it's just someone on the internet, I think that giving them the facts that they are in fact privileged is probably the best way of going about things. I'll use the criminal justice system as an example. It is so much better to be white than it is to be Black. So I think if you just show them that there are privileges, and it's not saying that you haven't struggled in your life, and it's not saying that you don't have a hard life. There are just issues that you don't have to face because you are white. So I think it's just really important to educate people in that sense. But at a certain point, you can't educate people. They just want to be right about how their life is really hard. So I think sometimes you just have to step back and distance yourself from that person and just not entertain their not right ideas.
Yeah. So for me, like, since I'm white passing, I've found that a good tactic is to like point out the fact that as someone who literally has black family members but also gets all the benefits of white privilege, that this is my experience. And then I also send them like links for resources. But like Michaela said, some people do just refuse to be educated, and some people are super ignorant. And unfortunately, some of those people are in high standing in the horse world and are upper level equestrians or Olympic athletes. And I think in that case, it's important to go on their channels and make it clear that the general public does not stand with their opinions and thinks that they're being ignorant, because otherwise it's an echo chamber of all of their hardcore fans telling them that they're right and they're great, and then it promotes the behavior to happen again. And I'll use the example with like Eric Lamaze, because he's had like so much time to go back on what he said, and he kept going. Like, he was just like, I'm just gonna keep digging myself a deeper hole, and he kept saying dumber and dumber things. And then you'd see privileged white equestrians like gassing him up and being like, yes, Eric, we worked so hard, like they're targeting us, this is racism, like that type of thing. If there's not the people in the comments to be like, you guys are being idiots, and like lots of them, because if you're forced to hear tons and tons of people telling you that you're stupid and that you're like not, you don't have to do that right away, but if they're being rude like Eric was, like tons of people pointing out that you're wrong about what you claim is true. Like, he denied racism in Canada, which was honestly the dumbest thing I've ever heard someone say. They need to be called out on their stuff, especially if they're in high standing. So I think the horse world needs to adopt like a zero tolerance policy for like listening to racism. And also, like, even if someone's a good rider, if they out themselves as being racist, you shouldn't still be there idolizing them for their riding skills, because who cares if they ride well if they're not a good person. So if you want to be an ally and if you want to call people out on white privilege, you got to start holding even your idols accountable, which is hard to do, especially if you've liked them for a while. So I think that's the important part, because obviously for a lot of Canadians, Eric was a big deal, but like, I didn't think I'd be calling out one of my childhood idols on Facebook and having him make fun of me back, but here we are, 2020. So yeah.
I just want to add to that.
Yeah.
You go first, Michaela. I want to add to that after.
Also, racism doesn't have to be like someone blatantly just saying the N-word or saying they don't like black people. It's such a wide spectrum of just random things, and I don't know if we'll get into this later, but like, we have all, maybe not Shelby, but I don't know, experienced people asking, oh, is that your horse? Or are you a groom? Or just out of pocket stuff like that at horse shows. So keep in mind, even if somebody prominent isn't saying that they don't support the movement, or if they're just kind of posting about it, they could still be coming off, at least to me, as not supporting me or my life because of how they are using their platforms.
Okay, that like leads into our next question that I have for us.
Perfect.
So the question is, do you experience racism from people at barns, competitions, and if so, what is it like? So who haven't I talked with yet? I feel like we're starting over now, aren't we?
Yeah.
Full circle. Yeah.
Okay, so it'll be me and Shelby that'll talk.
Okay, cool.
Can I go first?
Yeah.
Okay, so like Michaela was saying, it is so rough to go to competitions. I'm in the jumper world. I have done a bit of hunters. I'll explain basically why I don't like doing hunters as much. I've gone to almost every show, and people are asking me like, oh, whose horse is that? Or, you know, how did you get a horse? Or how did you get into riding? Or what do your parents do? And it's just like, you know, I could ask you the same questions. I don't understand why it's just me. Or I've been asked if I'm the groom, like, how am I the groom when I'm the one riding? Like,
Yeah, like, no kidding. Oh my God.
But it just, luckily at my barn, I've never had a problem with that. Everyone is super, super friendly. Everyone is very kind to everybody. And I'm only one of 2 Black equestrians that are at my barn. And luckily, I've never experienced anything negative. And when we do go to shows, I'm very lucky to have a trainer that will speak out for me and just like clap back at them like, why do you think this is not her horse? Like, I don't understand why you think she can't horseback ride or, you know, can't be in the sport, because quite frankly, if the viewers don't know, horseback riding started with Black people. So that may be a shocker to you, but back when, you know, slavery was a thing. Oh no, Michaela's gone.
Oh, okay. Well, when she comes back in, I'll add her back in. We can just finish the question and then.
So when, you know, slavery first started and everything, when the slave masters had horses, the Black people were the ones exercising and riding them. You know, they made up all the work, and the first jockeys were Black people. So it's just like the white people have taken over this culture, as, you know, they have taken over everything else, and we have to teach the ignorant people and educate them, because like we've said, there's not many of us out there, so we really have to amplify our voices to let them know, hey, that's not okay. Hey, go back, learn history.
That makes sense. Oh, did it freeze? Oh.
Necessary.
Oh no. Is it frozen for anyone else?
Yeah, I think it froze.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, well, I'll answer my part of the question until she's back. I can't. Yeah, it's still. Let me know if it comes back on your end, and then I'll stop talking. But like for me, like obviously I don't get people being overtly racist to me at shows, because like I'm so pale that when people see me, they just see another one of them. However, like I recently talked about with my trainer, obviously that was a moment where I was forced to be like, I like basically backed into a corner of someone trying to bully me into blatantly disregarding my moral views and forcing me to say that like white people have a reason to be scared of Black people. And that was like definitely the worst type of racism I've personally experienced, and it was really uncomfortable. So like how I handled that was obviously just not backing down, and it just made this person angrier and angrier until ultimately they like lashed out. And those types of people are the hardest ones to reason with. And I think that's why it's so important that allies and people of color alike just start shutting down racism, even like the microaggressions when they see it, like either by educating them, or if the person's like that and they're not willing to be educated, then they just need to be made so uncomfortable to say those things out loud that they stop saying them. And then eventually, hopefully that will start moving towards change because of that. But realistically, like I haven't experienced people being like treating me like a Black person, because when they see me, they see a white person. But if my dad were to come to shows with me, I have to add her back. But when my dad were to come to shows with me, he definitely would get a lot of looks, and people weren't always respectful. And like for someone like that, a good example of a microaggression towards someone like my father would be like as simple as when he goes to talk to like someone at the show office or a store, if they ever referred to him as like boy or something. That's a very common one that I've heard people say, and white people do not pick up on it because they're just like, oh, especially if it's a younger man. But a full grown man, there might be more likely to catch it. But that's a microaggression that's used to condescend and mistreat someone because of their race. And people often don't catch on to it unless they've actually had it used for that purpose against them. But yeah, next question.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, my like internet glitched out for a second. But the next question is, how far is too far to go for equal rights.
Oh.
Let's see. So do Michaela and Nana want to answer this one?
Yeah. I guess I can go first.
Yeah.
Okay, how far is too far? There's no. That's like those comments you see on TikTok where it says no with a heart.
No.
Right now, okay, so I guess we should start with a bit of a history lesson, I guess. So the fact that people are afraid of equality is like telling, because it just shows that a lot of white people are afraid that if we did get equality, what they did to us would be reversed onto them. And might I just say, slavery, we have no idea how many people actually died enslaved. First of all, people weren't even given like names or an identity. So we have no idea how many people died. It's estimated between 22 to 23 million people died in slavery, but we have no idea because there were people who jumped off the ships. There were people who literally, like, we just don't know. So I feel like people don't really understand how bad slavery really was. And it's just like a lot of people are saying, oh, well, slavery, get over it. It was like 200 years ago. Like, no, slavery happened, and then segregation happened. And then, we had protection for like that tiny bit of history right there. And then the Birth of a Nation came out, and then that was just like cut off. And then the KKK came. So then we just had way more like hate, and then again, segregation and all this stuff. Like, it's ingrained in the United States. Like, this country was built on the backbone of slaves, whether you want to realize it or not. It has been built on the backbone of slaves, and it is ingrained in our society. And honestly, it feels like I don't think because the society was built on racism and segregation and slavery, I don't really think there's a way to kind of reform it. I think the system has to be broken down in so many different ways. And that's where I kind of don't agree with like how far is too far, because if you're saying that like too far is too far to get equality, then you're basically saying we should not, like, Black people shouldn't be equal. Like, you're just saying that, like, it doesn't make any sense, and there's no too far for equality. Like, Black people have to be equal to white people. That's it. Systematic oppression has to stop. Racism has to stop. And unfortunately, in order to do that, I feel the only way is to break down the system, because there's way too many microaggressions, way too many, like, everything that's just ingrained in the United States system that's just built and stacked upon history that we unfortunately like can't get rid of. So I really don't agree with that statement that says like if there's a too far. I don't believe there's a too far. I really don't. I believe that there's a point where we need to unite together. However, I don't see a too far. I don't think there's a line. I just feel like you shouldn't even, think about that. We just have to think of how are we going to get to equality? What's the fastest way to achieve that? And if that's the fastest way, let's do it. So that's my piece.
Okay. So I'm not sure. I think I took away the part where I sent the questions, but it did end with they thought it was too far when it affected innocent people. So I can only kind of assume that they're talking about like the riots and things. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know if they're talking about
I wasn't sure what exactly they were talking about.
Civil rights movement as a whole, because in that sense there is not really a too far. But if they're talking about riots, I think that is comes from a place of a lot of privilege to say, well, I don't understand why people would burn down a building or loot or whatever. Well, the reason being is people are angry. plus COVID. So the government said, here's your money. You're just going to have to live off that, at least in the US, because they didn't really care. So we were stuck in a position for 400 years. We've been stuck in a position of second-class citizens. So people got angry. And to be fair, I don't think I personally would burn down a building or loot a building, but I was also raised in the suburbs. I do not have interactions with the cops at all. I think I could name probably twice I saw a cop car in my neighborhood. So I don't have daily interactions with these people. And I think that people have it far worse than I do. So I have no place to say, you shouldn't do that, or you can't do that, or you should protest this way, because we did protest the other way. We kneeled and we got called like un-American, or we tried to use our voices and we got told to like shut up. So there's not really a too far, because nothing's worked yet. I think if something worked, maybe that would be where we would stop. But nothing's worked, and it's very disheartening to see someone be killed just because they look like you. Like, you could be as smart as you want, you could be as wealthy as you want, you can be as nice as you want to the cops, and there's still a chance you could get killed. And that is, at its core, the issue, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Right on time. Okay. So we have time for 2 more questions that were posted before, and then we'll open up to, I guess, like a 15-minute open question from viewers.
Mhm.
So this next question is, how do you see the equestrian community in the U.S. changing in the next few years?
Well, sorry,
So
what was it? It cut out.
how do you see the equestrian U.S. changing in the next few years?
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I think it'll be, I think me and Michaela will answer this one today. Yeah.
Okay.
Right? Okay. So I guess I'll go first since Michaela was just talking. Honestly, in the next few years, I think that right now we're getting a lot of push because of what's going on in America with it, and you know, everything's just being more broadcasted and publicized, which I think good, because I am very happy to see that a lot of brands, and not as many as I would like, but a lot of equestrian brands have branched out to speak out and, say Black Lives Matter, or do things such as Dover, and give the opportunity for Black equestrians to be featured on their page, or, US taking and saying Black Lives Matter. So it is very important during this time that, it's good right now. It needs to be better, but we need to keep building on and continue to build on, and not just when, the riots are over, but for the years to come and forever to come, to, make sure that the equestrian world becomes what we as Black equestrians want it to become. We can't just take a stand right now and then drop everything once things start to get better. So that's what I have to say on it. But yeah, what do you have to say, Michaela?
I don't really know. I would like it to get better, and I think we are on the right track for it to get better. But that really, as much as there are Black people who are speaking out and will continue to speak out, it really is up to the allies and brands and bigger equestrians to really keep speaking about it, because there's so much that we can say about our experiences, but it's really important for allies and people who support the movement to just, as kind as I mean it, to just be annoying about it and to continue speaking on it. I think we as a community could be great, but I think it's really important for us to keep speaking on it. And I just repeated the same thing. Dang it. I think, as a community, we can be great. And things like safe sport, which includes hate speech, as much as it was ridiculed and all that stuff, I think it's really important to hold the higher ups and the bigger riders accountable for what they say online.
Okay. I feel like the other questions kind of like we already talked about.
Yeah.
So I feel like now we can go into the chat questions from the viewers. And Nana has one that she would like to respond to from a viewer. Someone said that they feel that there's definitely a too far, especially when things become violent. It's not a great idea to protest violence with violence. Nana, go ahead and speak your truth, sis.
Yeah. Okay, so I really don't agree, because first of all, if you look at slavery, there was no line to too violent. Like, nobody back then, I mean, they knew what they were doing was wrong, because if you look at a history book, the reason white slave owners didn't want blacks to be free was because they thought that the blacks were going to turn against them and come after them. So that's why
for like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Also, slavery was abolished in the UK already. So the US was just doing it for funsies at this point.
Yeah, the U.S. had no reason to continue slavery at all. People want to say it was for the economy. Like, no, it wasn't. It was not from the economy. And if that was the South's only way of producing an economy, then let the South burn, I guess. But, like, it wasn't their only way. They were just trying to hold on to that one thing that was going to make, because they felt that the North was beating them. And, that's an entirely different thing. I'm not going to start like lecturing you on history, but what I'm going to say is that I think we did peaceful. We did protests that did not work. We did kneels, we kneeled at the national anthem, and people raged. People raged on that. There was this whole controversy. I just remember in 2016 when it just happened, people were like, don't do it this way. This is disrespectful. This is horrible. Like, how could you do that? And I mean, that's ridiculous. So we have done it peaceful. And it doesn't work. And it hasn't worked in the past. And if you look at every single riot in the past, look at the Stonewall riots, the civil rights movement, it wasn't peaceful. There was tons of riots, there were tons of violence, but it ultimately led to change. Women's suffrage wasn't a peaceful movement either. None of these movements that got us changed to where we are today were peaceful. And I don't believe that you can have, no justice, no peace. If there's no justice for half of the nation, then you can't have peace. We can't live in peace until everybody is seen equally. And I think there's a lot of people in the equestrian community specifically that were outraged by this one video of a trailer. Yeah.
Oh my God.
A horse trailer in a protest that was, the riders were getting mad at. First of all, the people who were reposting that video had said nothing about George Floyd's death. Not a single thing. Like, nothing. Like, I'm so happy that we value a horse's life over a black man's. So, first of all,
I got harassed on Twitter for that.
Yeah.
First of all, I could tell that there weren't horses in the trailer, because who drives a trailer like that?
You can't.
I was like, there's nothing's confirmed. If you could give me a source that's not Facebook,
yeah.
I will
Oh my
believe
god.
it.
Yeah.
And
Right.
everyone was railing on me because I didn't care about horses, and I was
Same
like,
here.
I didn't know what to
Also,
say.
you can't throw a smoke canister in a trailer and not have the horses rattle the trailer at all as you're driving away. That's
Right,
like
horses
no
had
one
a
straight
in
up.
the
gun, so
trailer.
they were
Exactly.
fine.
But like they would freak out if there actually were horses in the trailer. They just all wanted to believe there was horses being hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Disgusting.
it was absolutely ridiculous, and I think a lot of people were sharing that, but missed the video where a cop literally ran over protesters with a horse. I mean, why would that fall on the protesters? You should be really condemning the cops for bringing animals into a situation that they know entirely is going to probably end up violent. And usually when it ends up violent, it's because they've done something to, start the violence. So, I don't believe that there's a line, and there's no peace if people aren't equal. There can't be peace. It just, the two don't go hand in hand. That was my piece.
And a lot of people are saying, well, you can't fix violence with violence. This isn't like the police aren't peaceful beings. The police organization isn't like handing out flowers and like being all kumbaya in a circle. This is a full, like, I don't know when you guys learn to drive, white people, when I say you guys, how if your parents told you how to interact with police officers.
Oh, no.
But I don't even drive, and I know that if I get pulled over, I'm supposed to put my hands on the dashboard, don't move, don't lean over to get anything until the cop is at my window. And there are so many, and as Black individuals, we grow up knowing that the police are not our friends. We are uber respectful to them, and we are to walk the straightest of lines around cops. Cops are very violent, and a lot of people don't agree with the all cops are bastards ideology, but there are good cops. Okay. There are good people who are cops. There are not good cops. There's a difference between those two statements because the system as a whole is bad. It is set up to affect poor and minority people way heavier than white people. And if you're interested in that, there are hundreds of sources that back this up. Anyone who's studied criminology will tell you that the system is racist. So this isn't peaceful on the cop side and then violent on the protester side. It was violent on the cop side. If you can look up compilations of cops throwing people to the ground and killing innocent people. And whenever I see like another Black person's killed by the cops, it's not, oh my God, this is a one-off. It's, oh my God, another one. Like, this is crazy. The police aren't peaceful. That's just how they are.
Okay, so I guess my Wi-Fi glitched out again. Did you already ask or answer that one question you wanted to answer to, Shelby?
No, not yet.
Okay,
so the one I wanted to answer was the one asking if racists deserve respect. And I would say you shouldn't, generally speaking, I don't think anyone who doesn't respect you or the people you care about, I don't think any of those people deserve respect. However, if they're being racist out of sheer ignorance, and it's like veiled racism, not like overt racism that they can't even try to claim ignorance over, in some cases it might be better to try to educate them if you have the energy to, and you can do that respectfully without being like a total dick to them right away. But if they're being blatantly racist, you shouldn't give respect to someone that has no respect for like a large portion of the population and is going to judge people based on their skin color. And one of the things that I wanted to point out from the previous conversation is that I find that focusing on the riots is a way of deflecting, and it's also a form of veiled racism for most people, in my opinion, because they can't explain why the Black Lives Matter movement bothers them, so they focus on any negative aspect of it that they can. And then they'll say you can't solve violence with violence. And then those same people are okay with their country spending $1 trillion to send their army to go kill people and solve violence with violence. So you shouldn't condone a powerful country going about doing that and then take issue with the protesters, because it's the country that's corrupt. And the reason why people have to do the protesting in that way and the rioting is because they're not reasoning with people who have morals. They're reasoning with selfish assholes who don't bat an eye before they go and just kill hundreds of people in some village filled with people of color in the far off end of the world that they all forget about. So people focusing on the protests is kind of their racism jumping out in a lot of cases. So I would say with people like that, even, they need to be educated on why the riots are what's bothering them. And they also need to take a history lesson and learn how much riots have changed for the world, because all of us here wouldn't be able to vote without the suffragette riots, like Nana said before. And you don't have to be nice to people who aren't being nice. Like, being racist is like one of the most insidious forms of meanness someone can take, because all they're judging off of is someone's skin color. So I don't think you need to be nice or respectful to them, especially if they're being blatantly racist. But there are some cases where education might actually work if they're receptive. But other than that, screw them and call them out blatantly. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that was a good one. So the next question there is that I feel like I want to answer to is someone asked, a lot of times Black hairstyles and textures are called unprofessional. Do you have to deal with that in the equestrian world? Hold on, I'm putting this in my charger. Yes. How do I say this in a short way? I was talking about how earlier I didn't really like to do hunters anymore, and that I mostly do jumpers now. And the reason is because, hunters is very posh, and, they want your hair up in in your helmet perfectly fitting without any problems. You can't see your hair, nothing like that. They also want you to be stick thin, tall, white, blonde, brunette, preferably. And must I put emphasis on the white part? So it's been unfair when I've gone into the hunter ring that I significantly would place lower than white counterparts who definitely did not deserve the ribbon that they place. I would have my whole bar in there and everyone would just be like, you had everything on point. You guys looked amazing. You guys did nothing wrong. And I would still get a lower placement than someone that was white, thin, tall, and had the best tack, the most expensive tack. And, they messed up in the courses or had, clear mess ups where they weren't deserving of the ribbon that they got. So, I guess that has to do with like the hair part. I feel like it's very unfair that the hunter ring makes it that you have to put all of your hair up into a helmet when there's a ton of Black equestrians that have hair that's, thick. You have braided hair that you see Nana has, and, our hair is not usually straight. Like, I can't fit my hair in my helmet, like rarely. It's very hard. And I know when people have braids, it basically just like takes them out, because if you go into the hunter ring with braids and a ponytail, because clearly it's very, very difficult to get braids into a helmet, and you'll have to get like 3 sizes up. And at that point, is it even protecting you from a fall? So it's just like when you go into the hunter ring with braids and a ponytail, they're automatically going to, kick you out and say, well, that's not professional. So it happens a ton. I think that rule should be changed. I really don't see the point to it, you know. At that point, like I said, your head isn't even being protected because you're just trying to do it for the look. So texture of hair is just a whole nother issue.
Yeah, we should. I encourage everyone watching, if you would like, to email USEF and talk about that rule, because not only is it super unsafe, it's really hard for people with curly hair or even just slightly thick hair, to perform, like, do this task.
Yeah, Shelby.
I don't know if people with curly hair have, like, tried to put your hair in your helmet if you're not a hunter, but it takes me maybe 15 minutes to accomplish this.
Yes.
And it is truly, I'm lucky I've never fallen at a show and hit my head, but if I did, I'm not sure if my helmet would stay on my head. So that's really concerning.
I tried it once, and I thought that it was normal to get like a splitting headache from it. But
yeah. Oh my God.
No, that was the same way with me. Like, I showed with braids before. Yes, I went to the hunter ring with braids this long.
In your helmet?
Yep. I fit it all in. I spent 30 minutes. I'm not joking. My mom and I spent 30 minutes of fitting it in, and I was like, Mom, these braids are going in the helmet. Like, we literally stuffed it in. And I have pictures. I have a picture of the Modus with it, and it literally looks like nothing is there. But if you saw my experience, my head was throbbing.
Oh my God.
Like, it almost cut off the circulation, I feel like, to my forehead. And then when I took it off, I had this giant red line. It was horrible. Like, it was so bad. It was the worst. I was like almost nauseous at the end of the day doing that.
God. You should have won just for that. Like, honestly.
I did get champion. But thank God I did not fall off. If I fell off, that would have been it, guys. I would not be sitting here today. I would not be here. I would not be here. So
yeah, and it's just like we should not have to go through that just to be in a competition. Like, that's honestly why I do jumpers now. It's because the judge cannot judge you on the way you look. You win. Like, if you win, you win, and everyone's watching. So there's no way to try to, pull a slick one over someone's eyes. You know, if in jumpers, it's like if you got the fastest time with no faults, you're the winner. You can't in hunters. It's like this person looks perfect, even though they broke the gate up a couple times. You know, they looked better than that black girl, so I'm going to give the ribbon to her. So, it's just, it sucks. And
it's bad.
I have yet to find a nice hunter judge. I will not be going back in the hunter ring because of that. And it's really unfortunate because I do like hunters. But, jumpers is just where I am now.
I think that another thing people should acknowledge is just how weird it is in a sport as dangerous as ours that helmets are viewed as an accessory rather than like a necessary piece of safety equipment, because how you wear them should solely be about protecting your head. If they're going to police anything helmet related, they should be making sure that people are going in with well-fitting helmets. Nothing else. Yeah.
Exactly. It's so dangerous, and people should be like not wearing their hair up in helmets anyway. Like, it's so bad. Like, regardless if your hair is straight, you should not be stuffing it in there. It ruins the function of a helmet. Everybody should be showing with at least a ponytail or their hair down. Like, it's just so bad. It's such a bad rule, and it's all for beauty and all for this Eurocentric style that, only fits white people. It's so bad. So that rule definitely has to go in the hunter world.
It's awful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Okay, so I guess we'll do like one more question. Let's see.
Wow, this whole time I could have been showing the comments on the screen.
I guess we'll do this one. Are you affected by jobs hiring? Are you passed over for a lighter skinned person?
I can answer if you want.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sure. Well, I've never had to apply to a job yet. But specifically in the equestrian world, am I judged by my color? I would say definitely at shows, yes. If you guys have seen, I don't know if you guys have seen my horse, but he is like a massive chunk of meat. And literally every time I go to shows, it's like, because he is one, he's like a tower. He is just a gigantic man for no reason. Like, so he already kind of has the eyes on him regardless. Like, he just sticks out like a sore thumb. And it's just like everyone's looking at him and gawking at him, like, wow, that horse is beautiful. And then, like there's me, and I've seen people literally gasp to see me.
Oh my God.
Like, no way. Like, I have seen people gasp to see me having a horse like that. And I've had people like come up to my horse and just like pet him before even asking me. Like, it is just, there are some disrespectful microaggressions that have happened to me at horse shows that are just so weird. Like, why would you go up to someone's horse when, I'm grazing my horse, I'm right next to my horse, you won't even say hi or like ask to pet my horse? That is the weirdest thing. Like, they'll just come and be like, oh, hi, hi, horsey. And then they'll look at me and be like, oh, what's his name? Like, girl, you shouldn't be touching my horse in the first place.
Sorry, he doesn't like racists.
Yeah. Jackson has a low BS tolerance.
He's allergic.
Yeah. He's allergic to everything. But yeah, so it's the weirdest experience at horse shows. It's like I haven't experienced overt racism yet, but I've definitely experienced some strong microaggressions that are just like, y'all are weird. And so it's so I guess that's my personal like experience as a POC on the California A circuit, being the only Black person out of like 7,000 people showing. Of course, numbers affected by COVID, so there's probably like not that many. But when I was going to those big shows, there'd be like almost like 7,000 people, and I'd just be like the sore thumb. And my dad and my mom would also be those sore thumbs. And then my giant horse was there to make it an even bigger thumb. So it's an experience every time, but it's got to be welcoming. It's not a very like healthy environment for a POC.
I don't know if this is just a me thing because I have anxiety and I'm just like always anxious about stuff. But whenever I go to get my horse from the field or like I'm around my horses and there's not someone I know, I'm always scared they're going to think I'm trying to steal my own horse or just something random out of pocket at horse shows and stuff. Because I'll like go up to my horse's stall and it'll just be me. I'm just scared they're going to think I'm trying to steal my own horse. And I'm like, no.
I feel that sometimes. I mean, like, everyone's super friendly in my barn, but there's some people that like come to take lessons that aren't like a part of the barn family. And I'll just like be there alone, going to get CJ in a stall and like taking him out. And like, he always has all eyes on him because he's tall, dark, and handsome. So everyone's always like, oh my God, that horse. Like, and then I feel like I'm just going to get like called out one time, like, hey, like, what are you doing with that horse? And I'm like, sweetie, this is my horse. Like, do you want to see the papers? Do you want to see the documents? Like, because when that day happens, I'll be ready. I will be ready.
That's so funny. Yeah, I honestly feel like people think I'm gonna like steal my horse too, and it's like, how am I gonna steal? Like, how? But the guy's like gigantic. Like, the guy's like 6'9", I'm pretty sure. Like, the man is big. Like, this man's not going anywhere. So I don't know.
Archie's like 18 hands, so we're not going anywhere
Jesus
without
Christ.
a warm blood trailer. Like, we're not leaving.
Large.
Yeah.
I guess we'll ask like one last question before we, wrap it up. How do you think we can make a difference at shows where there are people of color counterparts and where they're most likely experiencing racism? Let's see. I feel like if, for say, I was a white person and, I had a black person that was at my bar and that came to the show with me and something racist was aimed towards her, I would be backing her up. Or backing him or her up. I would not let that person get away with talking however they want to talk to, whoever they're talking to. And regardless or not, if you're friends with that person, you need to stand up to people because I feel like white racists are scared of white people that stand up for black people. Like they're almost just as scared as that to them as they are of black people. So if they see that, they're going to be infuriated because someone that looks like them is not on their side, and they hate when that happens. And I feel like when they see that, it's definitely going to like knock something in their head, like, hey, maybe they won't understand that it wasn't right, but maybe they'll think twice before saying it because clearly not everyone around them is going to be a racist. So the white people that are around need to stand up for their black friends, or like I said, friends or not, you need to stand up for your black counterparts. If you believe what is right, then you should be out speaking.
And there should be at shows and probably at Barnes too, there should be a zero tolerance policy for racism, because it's not something just that slips out and it's like,
no,
they should get banned. People that say things, especially like Shelby was talking about before, like people that are Olympic riders that are saying racist things out in the open for everyone to see, needs to be held fully accountable. They need to be banned. They need to be fined. They need to get kicked out. Like, that's not okay. And that needs to be shown, like, if you do this, this is what's going to happen to you. It's no more, if you do this, nothing happens. Like, that needs to change immediately, because when people see that there are repercussions for your wrong actions, there's going to be less of it because they're going to be scared.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Like, the problem with this sport is that if you look at any other sport, like I've done a lot of sports in my career. I've done karate, volleyball, softball, all these, tennis. I mean, so if you look at other sports, you see that they have all these programs and everything that prevents racial discrimination, and there's places to report these people as well. And usually, when you see big athletes that are talking out and saying stupid stuff on their Instagram, like Eric did, they are like taken out, banned for a year. All these things happen, and the equestrian world has no repercussions for people who are saying stupid stuff. And so it makes it a safe place for these people, these racist people, to have as like a breeding ground, essentially, because they can just say whatever they want with no repercussions. And I've seen, really disgusting messages on like when USC, a perfect example is when USCF came out on the Blackout Tuesday with the blackout post. The comments filled were just horribly racist stuff, that people should not be saying in 2020. I mean, people shouldn't be saying it at all, but I mean, these were crazy stuff. I mean, people are saying black people were thugs, black people were violent. I've seen comments that have said white people have a reason to fear black people. And these comments are what's driving people away from the sport. This is why you're not seeing POC in the sport. We do have a problem, and we have a problem where these people, they feel comfortable in saying these disgusting things, and we shouldn't make them feel comfortable. You should speak out. You should put pressure on the people who are saying stupid stuff, and we should be putting pressure on USCF to get these people off and get them banned in different outlets. I mean, nobody should be comfortable in saying those kind of stuff. So that's where I believe that, putting pressure on people helps, make a change. Even if it doesn't seem like it's helping, it does, because we obviously aren't in a position where the USCF or the top officials are helping our cause at this point. And so what we need is the people of the sport to come together and say, hey, this is not acceptable anymore. You can't be saying this stuff anymore. And we just really need to clamp down on the people who are saying stupid stuff in this sport.
To add to that, I think that people, especially like the idols in our horse world, they need to be held like accountable to the point where you're putting a comment disagreeing with every comment, agreeing with them, like 4 disagreeing comments to every person that applauds them. Because even with George Morris, who was actually like found guilty of something, whereas like a lot of these racist comments, there's no governing board that found these people guilty of being racist, so they can deny it. But like George Morris was a pedophile, and that came out, and people still defended him for that. And people who are willing to defend these actions, they need to be reamed out by like, and make it so uncomfortable to defend these upper level athletes. And we also need to expose what they're doing, because I don't know, there's really subtle forms of racism. Like Tiffany Foster, for example, liked a comment where a woman said to me, hey, like, you shouldn't be talking about Black Lives Matter because I doubt you're even half Black because you don't look Black enough. And like Tiffany Foster liked it, and I'm like, okay, so like, you're not saying anything because you don't want it to look bad on you, but you're liking all of these problematic comments in this thread. And everyone who sees her now won't see her as a racist, but like, she's liking comments that incite racism at the bare minimum, and some that were actually racist. And Canada doesn't have a safe sport, so even if these people are like horrible in barns, you don't really have anywhere to report them at all. Like, and US is still bad because obviously it's hard to get safe sport to like follow through with stuff, but like we should have had stuff like that ages ago to protect people, because we have people leaving their young children with like trainers several hours a week for lessons, and like athletes that are spending a lot of one-on-one time with trainers. So like racism and all this stuff, like it goes on without it necessarily being able to be easily proved. So there needs to be ideally for the whole horse world, a board that handles all of these issues that you can report to anonymously, so you don't have to fear fallout. And they need to actually take things seriously, because people get away with everything. Like it's disgusting. Like our sport has so many problems.
Yeah, and I don't want to name names because this person likes to send their following after other people. But they did something wrong and then tried to play the victim on the situation. What they did was directly against the Black community. So, and when they were called out on it, they made it all about them. And then there were people who didn't want to publicly defend them, but were in their comments, like saying, you did nothing wrong, and accepting their apology. So it's even stuff like that, you need to call people out on it, because they're just going to keep doing it because they don't want to get into politics, whatever that means. When this
okay, the name is Zoe. VL Equestrian.
And like, to people who follow her, like, I want to say, even if you like someone, it doesn't mean you shouldn't hold them accountable. You can be friends with someone even while holding them accountable for their behavior. And it's really manipulative and toxic to have influencers that victimize themselves, get their cult following to applaud them for their misbehavior so they never have to acknowledge it. You're teaching this person bad habits by doing this. And like, I say this as someone, I've said dumb shit online because I've been online with a following since I was like 16. I've said some dumbass shit and I've gotten roasted and it sucked. But at the end of the day, you can't just make yourself the victim and then pretend it never happened, because you'll never learn, and you can't handle things in real life like that. And you're not doing your idols any favors by not holding them accountable, because these cult followings get people, they literally, like, they think they're the Messiah because they're constantly, like, it's an echo chamber of, you're the best, you can't do anything wrong. Hey, this racist thing you did, that's all right because you ride well and you're great and you have 100,000 followers, so this is okay. Like, hold them accountable.
I also believe that, like, oh, sorry.
A lot of these people, Zoe in particular, we have messaged her privately and said, hey, this is wrong, or we commented and say this is wrong, and I personally got blocked. Like,
She blocked every one of her haters that came after her.
Haters, you guys said like really nice educational things. Like you were not rude about the comments because I remember seeing them because you sent screenshots because I can't see them because I'm also blocked. But anyways, they weren't hateful comments. It's just the hateful part of the behavior is just saying, hey, this is wrong, which is problematic because you can't be untouchable as an influencer. You can still do wrong and people shouldn't support your wrongdoing. And you guys weren't rude, but these comments are getting framed as hate. So then you get vilified in other references to the issue where they're like, oh, I was hated on. And then they assume that you guys were actually like threatening and being mean, and you weren't. You weren't at all. Like,
and I also think that as well as holding people accountable, I think people also need to understand that POCs, like, it's not our responsibility to educate every single person. Like, we live in a day and age where there's Google, and you can Google a lot of things. Like, I can Google what do I want to eat for dinner tonight, and I will just get a lot of things. There are ways you can fact check. Like, it's not that hard to tell if a source is reliable. You should be able to tell if a source is reliable if you're on the internet. You know, you shouldn't be getting these statistics, oh, just because Google told me this statistic is good. No, check it. Do your own research. Have your own education. I mean, like, there are ways that you can do research. And if you're not willing to put in the research, you shouldn't be expecting others to just cater to you. There's tons of movies you could watch. There's tons of anti-racism books that you can read. Toni Morrison is a good author. Hit her up. Invisible Man is also a really good book. I mean, there's so many like articles, books, everything that you can read. The Hate U Give. I mean, just be smart about it and educate yourself. We should be encouraging people to educate themselves, yes, but we should also be telling these people like, okay, right, we should be telling these people like, okay, there's a point where this is not acceptable anymore. You should not be saying this stuff anymore in this day and age. And we got to hold people accountable. You know, we've tried this soft approach, and I don't think that's working. I think people need a hard lesson and a hard knock on the head that makes them realize, because like Selby said, I've said some dumb shit on the internet, and I've like she said, I got them roasted before. Like, I've said some stupid shit, and I've learned from that, you know? And I feel like people need to learn how to accept their mistakes and move on. You know, accept your mistakes, educate yourself, and move on. It is your responsibility to educate yourself. I mean, it's so easy. Just take a day to research and make sure your sources are reliable, and there should be no issue. It's just that it's not that these people don't want to do their own research. It's just, no, it is that they don't want to do their own research. They don't want to do any research at all. That's the issue. Like, we have to hold these people accountable. Like, these people are having their egos stroked so much by just their fans and everything. No, like, we have to hold people accountable.
I think
that's it.
The one take you can get from today is hold everyone accountable.
Even your idols.
Yeah,
especially your idols, especially.
Yeah, exactly.
If you love your idols enough, you should want them to be a better person than they are, straight up. And if they block you for it, then they shouldn't be your idol, straight up.
Right, exactly.
Oh,
for like the sad, you know, things that people, I can't remember her name, but when people say wrong things and then they come back and they are being hated on for saying those wrong things, but then they're like, oh, you know, I'm sorry, I've learned now. Like, are they really sorry, or are they really sorry for the reason they should be sorry, or are they sorry just for being caught? Mm-hmm. Like, I need better. Exactly. I need better reasons for why you're sorry and what you learned from being wrong. I don't want just an apology saying, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I hurt my followers, or, you know, because what did you learn from being wrong?
The apology has to like reflect how much they resisted giving the apology in the first place, and how ignorant the stuff they said was. And it's not a weakness to say you're wrong. That's like the biggest thing people need to realize, is it's okay to be a dumbass sometimes, but just acknowledge it.
Right.
And you're saying sorry don't say, oh, well, this is why I did it. No. There's no excuses.
Or but.
Also, yeah, you can't, there shouldn't be an excuse of, oh, I don't know, because I involve myself with older people. This may not be a universal thing, but oh, I was drunk, or I was intoxicated, or X, Y, and Z. There shouldn't be excuses. It's just, I'm sorry, I'll learn from this and move on. That's just, and also, while I'm the one speaking, someone asked if we get labeled as the angry minority.
Yes.
And yeah, it's one of my biggest fears because I get loud pretty quickly, and I get in arguments a lot with my family members about this of, oh, you shouldn't riot, or you shouldn't X, Y, and Z, because they're gonna look at you badly, or they're gonna say, oh, that's the reason they don't deserve rights, is because they're angry all the time, which is we kind of have a right to be angry.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
it's been, kind of, no, definitely. Also, have you ever seen a white man or a white woman talking to customer service? Because
Yeah.
It's so bad.
Yeah.
I personally feel like this is also another issue I have, is that I don't know why I'm holding this. I personally feel that I don't get labeled as the Black angry woman as much because I have a very white voice. And what I'm told a lot is that, oh, you're an Oreo, or oh, you're not like the other Black people, or oh,
the whitest Black person you've ever met.
Yes, I'm the whitest Black person they've ever met. Yes, I've heard all the comments, all of it. I've heard all of it, oh, you're white on the inside, and all these things, oh, but you don't act Black. All these things, and
so awful.
It's disgusting. And I have because my parents immigrated from Ghana, I have a very Valley Girl accent because I was born in the States, and I guess I just don't have a Black accent, and that's why people are just, quick to say oh, you're so educated, oh, you speak well, you present yourself in a perfect manner, and it's disgusting, and it has to stop. That's why I feel like I don't really get that stereotype as much as others, and it's absolutely disgusting. So people need to stop that rhetoric. It's gross, and it's another microaggression that just needs to be put in the grave.
I guess I'll say is I remember a couple shows that I went to a few weeks ago in June. Someone came up to my trainer while I was about to go in the ring for my jumper run, and a couple of people came up to ask my trainer oh, is she nice? Is she a friendly girl? Do you have problems teaching her? And it's just they act as if I can't hear it. I do have ears. I can
they're talking about a dog. Holy crap.
Luckily, I have a trainer that will clap back at that.
Yeah.
She will ask, why do you feel the need to ask that? What makes you think that she isn't a nice person? You've never spoken to her. You've never met her before. She is right here, so she can hear you talking. I've had that happen, and it's really unfortunate, but you just have to brush it off at that point because you're going into the show ring. You can't be worried about these ignorant people. But then after you get out of the ring, you let them know.
Yeah. Right, exactly that.
Now, on my bad side, but that doesn't happen on a regular unless I have a reason to.
Yeah, it's weird. It's also weird how people lead up to racist questions. When I was at Thermal in November, which by the way, that was my first A show. So that I was showing, and I've been to A shows traveling to try horses, but the first show that I was showing in was in Thermal. And I went to the food court, and I was just alone. I was just getting food by myself. I was going to get some for my friend and my parents because my parents and I arrived at the show early. And so I went in there, and then there was this lady just talking with me. And normally she's like, oh, how are you doing? How is your day? All this stuff, normal conversation. And she's just she leads in and she's like, oh, you know, how's your experience? And I was like, oh yeah, like my experience is going well. I didn't even know she was talking about race at the moment. So I was like, oh yeah, my experience in the horse show is going well. And she's like, yeah, I don't see a lot of black people in this sport. I was like, whoa, that went from like 0 to 100 so fast. I was like shocked. I just kind of like laughed it off because like what else were you supposed to do? Like snap? I don't know. I just kind of like laughed and I'm like, yeah, there's not a lot of us out there. And she's like, oh yeah, because like a lot of black people are in lower incomes and all that stuff. And I'm like, what is this like lady talking to me about? Like, she's bold that she's coming and talk to me like this. Like, you have to feel really comfortable to say these stuff. So that's another like thing where I say people have to be uncomfortable. They have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable because no, like you just can't go up to some black kid and just start talking about like how black people are in like lower incomes and all this stuff at a horse show. Like, I'm just trying to get some pasta.
Oh my God.
It's weird. People are weird. So.
Well, and they make you uncomfortable, and they have for centuries. So they can handle being uncomfortable while they're educated. Like, I don't give two shits if someone is uncomfortable about being told that they have ingrained racism in their life. They need to be willing to hear it. And when I said hold idols accountable, that is including myself. If I ever say something stupid, I want people to call me out on it and be like, hey, that's also really ignorant and uneducated, because then you can change. But like, that's so disgusting that she kept going to in that conversation. Like, to the one talking. Question, like, still bad, but to follow it up with more, it's like,
it's okay to just backpedal. It's okay to backpedal and just like walk away.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do because it just catches you so off guard. Like, I'm in a place, I'm trying to get food. Like, you know, I just arrived at the horse show, like, trying to get food. It's just off guard, you know? So it's like, there's not much you can say in that moment or, like, you know, walk away like, I don't know what this person's like in it. It's just, there's not much time to think in it. So it's just like, you kind of just like laugh it off and just to like nod and agree because like, what else can I say, you know? So it's like those moments that are like so gross, and it's just, people are way too comfortable, and people have to get uncomfortable. Like, it's just, you have to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I guess that basically wraps it up for this panel. I really want to say I appreciate everyone who came to watch, that asked questions on our Instagram and asked questions in the live chat. It is really important that we had this panel, and I think it's also really important that we do others for people that still have questions to ask us that we didn't get time to answer because, girls, men, we can go on and on about racism in the equestrian world and our experiences, and we want to make sure that other people have a voice to speak during these panels. So I definitely think that we can agree on there will be another one of these or more of these to come. And I think for this being our first one, it was very successful. And we got a lot of things off of our chest. And I hope that a lot of people learned from watching this panel and compare the experiences that we talked about so we can better the sport that we all love. Because I love to say that if we can all love horses, why can't we love each other? So I guess
that's beautiful.
It's like horses don't see color, so why should people, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Amani, for ending that so nicely.
Yeah. And next time we won't be late because we found a good platform to do it with, and we can even add more people next time. So even better. So it'll be better next time. Yeah.
StreamYard, I love you. You're
also,
Messiah.
Yeah. I'll leave the live up, Victoria, and other people who didn't watch the first part, because then you can replay it.
Yes.
On my YouTube channel. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Anyone I feel like there's a couple people in the comments that don't know our social medias, so I think someone was adding all of our pages.
I can post them again. I can also pin them in the comment on the YouTube video.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I can do that.
That works.
How many underscores does your Instagram name have, Imani? I don't want to get it wrong.
I know, I always get it wrong.
Yeah, like, I was like, oh no.
Yeah, it's 3.
3? Okay,
Okay.
perfect. Oh shoot, my
All right.
horses are being stupid. Okay, gotta go get hay.
Yeah.
Bye.
Right.
Thank
Bye,
you, everyone,
everyone.
and thanks for coming, even though it was late. Well, yeah, thanks.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Ah.